Do you remember Cody Simpson? If you were a kid or teenager in the 2010s or late 2000s, you might know who this is. In today's episode of What Happened to Them, let's talk about Cody Simpson. And unlike many of the other people we discuss on this list, Cody Simpson is still very successful, but in a very different way, and we're going to get into that. Similar to other teen heartthrobs like Justin Bieber and Austin Mahone, Cody Simpson would upload videos onto YouTube. He would do covers of very popular songs like I'm Yours by Jason Mraz. He would then appear in 2009 on this Australian show called The 730 Report. It's very similar to what we have in America with ABC's 2020. Unlike America, they have like performances and stuff. And this is where a mainstream audience finally started knowing about Cody Simpson. After his first mainstream debut, he would sign with Warner Records, specifically in the Australian division, and he would end up releasing his debut single, which I'm not going to try pronouncing at all, with Florida. He would release another single after this, and after the success of both of those, he would move to Los Angeles. And to capitalize off his breakout year, he would release his debut EP in December of 2010. This EP was called For You, and it included the two singles I talked about. The EP didn't really make much noise. In fact, it only debuted in the US Heatseekers chart. I'm not gonna lie, while Cody was popular at the time, he was really trying to break out of the Australian market, because at the time he was only really big in Australia, and around the world he was starting to gain some recognition, and that's why he moved to Los Angeles so they can capitalize off that. He would finally start growing his audience outside the Australian market when he was included in the Hop soundtrack in April of 2011. Damn, this movie was a fever dream. He recorded a version of I Want Candy, and while the song itself didn't really chart, it was Americans' first impression of Cody Simpson. Around the same time, he went on tour with fellow idol Grayson Chance, and I can make a whole video on him too. So needless to say, Cody Simpson's team was making sure that he was literally everywhere so that he can finally start gaining a fan base. Also in 2011, he would release his second EP, Coast to Coast, and this in my opinion is officially his breakout. The EP would peak at number 12 on the Billboard 200, which is very impressive for someone who's like never charted before. I don't think people realize how hard it is to be even on the Billboard 200 at all. Like, albums are way different than singles. It's very hard for the entire body of work to do well. I think it's crazier because we have so many artists out there who have never had a number one album, like Doja Cat, for example. Anyways, going back on topic, he would also do a tour for Coast to Coast, but it wasn't an arena or a theater show. It was a mall tour. Gosh, I miss those so much. Back then, mall shows would really help your career. So obviously, he was already doing pretty well for himself, but I think this really opened the doors for him. In 2012, he would release his debut album, Paradise. This album would peak at number 27 on the Billboard 200, which again isn't really that bad, but crazy how this one performed lower than the EP. Despite this, Cody Simpson had a very loyal fanbase at this point, even beyond just Australia. Around the time of the release of this album, Cody started making more public appearances, and this would both help him and hurt him, and we're gonna get into that. He was specifically very popular in the kids and teen markets, and so you would find him at like places like Kid Choice Awards and Teen Choice Awards. His team knew that most of his fan base were children, and so they need to make sure that he was in children's spaces so that more children are aware of him. And this would end up actually working because in July of 2013, he would release his second album, Surfer's Paradise, and this was his first top 10 entry into the Billboard 200. This album included the song La Da Dee, which in my opinion is peak music. Now, what's interesting about Cody Simpson is despite the fact that he was having all of these successful albums, none of his singles were actually charting. Well, I take that back. They were charting, but they weren't on like the mainstream charts. For example, the song Pretty Brown Eyes, which is a part of this album, peaked at number 8 on the Bubbling Under charts. It also peaked at number 61 on the UK singles chart, which isn't that bad, but I feel like it's much easier for artists to break out in the UK. I don't know, it's just something I've noticed because it's a very interesting ratio. Also in 2014, he would win Breakout Artist at the Teen Choice Awards. So yeah, he was pretty much on top of the world at this point. However, in August of 2014, it was announced that Cody Simpson would be leaving Atlantic Records. And after this, he would go independent. As an independent artist, he would officially start his own record label titled Coast House. And in July of 2015, he would release his third album, Free, through Coast House. This man really loves his July days, doesn't he? Unfortunately, without a major label backing him, he didn't really have much promotion. And the album peaked at number 128 on the Billboard 200, which is vastly different from his previous works, which peaked in the top 50 at least. The promotion for this album was quite literally just a Good Morning America performance and a few interviews. Now, the fact that it even charted at all, despite all the odds against him, is a pretty big deal and it showed how loyal his fanbase still was with him. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Olivia is coming through in the background. I actually listened to this album for this video because I've actually never heard it in my life. And in my opinion, it was his best work. Cody titled it Free because it was his first album without really any outside sources forcing him to make the music. He was no longer trying to be called a teen heartthrob, but instead an actual artist. And that's not to say like teen heartthrobs can't make actual music, but you know how corporate media works. Now, after the underperformance of this album, Cody was kind of taking a long break. He didn't release anything until 2017. He would return in 2017, but not as a solo artist, but in a group. This new group, which consisted of 3 members, including Cody Simpson, as the name may suggest, didn't really see much success. Despite even having the Cody Simpson name attached to it, people weren't checking them out. I checked out their work for this video because I didn't even know Cody Simpson started a band. And you know, there's some gems there. Like, I think they have some good songs. But unfortunately, in early 2019, the band broke up. While he was still in the band in 2018, Cody Simpson joined the Broadway cast of Anastasia. It was a very unique move by him, but a lot of people liked his performance. Now, after he was done with Anastasia and the departure of his band, he wasn't really releasing anything as much. He did release a few singles here and there, and he would also perform at a few major sports events. But as a musical artist, he wasn't really giving us much. In 2019, after the world kind of saw him disappear, he would return not to music, but to swimming. I just realized that was very obvious. I'm just gonna have my head cover it so TikTok doesn't say anything. So what I didn't mention was that in his childhood, he was very into swimming. In fact, he did compete in swimming as well. And in 2019, he decided he wanted to return to swimming, and so he decided to join the USC swimming team. USC stands for University of Southern California. Despite the fact that he wasn't in the swimming competition arena for like over a decade, he was doing pretty well for himself. He would release a swimming documentary to Amazon Prime Video in 2021 to document his improvements as well. In February of 2023, he competed in this competition where he made some records along with 3 other members of his team. So a lot of people were starting to notice him as a swimmer rather than a pop star. After all of this, he would compete in the 2021 Australian swimming trials. And because of this, he was actually selected for the championships. Also in 2022, he would compete in the Commonwealth Games at Birmingham. I could go on and on about his swimming accomplishments, but we're not here for the swimming. That's just basically what I'm going to give you for today. If you want to look into his swimming career, you can definitely check it out. It's on Google. But yeah, he's a very successful swimmer now, and he could potentially be competing in the Olympics soon. Pop star to Olympic transition is very interesting, and I think that's something Netflix would make into a movie. No, I'm not deeming Cody Simpson like a failure or a flop or anything. In terms of music, maybe he's not as successful anymore, mostly because he's not releasing anything. But I definitely think the lack of promotion after going independent is what really hurt him, because he was trying to shift his image. A lot of his peers were trying to be like the next Justin Bieber, and they ended up kind of shooting themselves in the foot because Justin Bieber himself was transitioning to like an actual pop star rather than a teen idol. Like, none of these artists were really trying to mature with their work or try a different sound. Cody tried doing that, but again, as an independent artist with lack of promotion, it didn't really go well for him. I will say though that the fact that he was seen in so many of these kids' events has also hurt him. We talked about this many times before on our other episodes, but when you heavily associate yourself with children and teen media and like appear in children and teen media, people are going to associate you with children and teen media, and when they grow out of the children and teen media, they're not going to want to pay attention to you because you are the children and teen media, if that makes sense. So I definitely think that could also be at play as well. Despite the fact that he did try maturing his image, people did see him as the teen heartthrob still. And that's very much seen to this day with many of the articles talking about his swimming career by saying teen heartthrob Cody Simpson swimmer blah blah blah. Now, despite the fact that his music career kind of shifted backwards a little bit, he's still very successful nowadays. I mean, he's a professional swimmer who has potential to literally enter the Olympics at any time. So I'll say a win is a win. And I'm very happy to see him go for his passions rather than what the corporate media is trying to tell him. But what do you guys think of Cody Simpson? Are you a fan of Cody Simpson? Were you a fan of Cody Simpson? Are you a fan of him as a swimmer and like never thought he was a teen heartthrob? I wonder if there's people out there like that.